For years, I'd been quietly miserable, James started, his voice soft but steady, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he faced our assembled loved ones. I want a divorce. The delicate clink of his wine glass lingered in the air, his words exploding like a thunderclap amidst our 25th anniversary gathering. Our grown children, Emma and Michael, gaped, their faces frozen in shock. Friends paused mid-drink, eyes flickering between us. The private room at the upscale restaurant, adorned with silver balloons and framed photos chronicling our shared decades, suddenly felt suffocating. I met his gaze, nodded calmly, and said, "I understand." A shadow crossed James's face. Surprise, maybe, or frustration at my unruffled response. He'd likely anticipated tears, pleas, or a public scene. Instead, I turned to our guests, my voice warm as I thanked them for joining what had unexpectedly become our final celebration as a couple. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 57, and after dedicating a quarter-century to my marriage, raising our children, running our home in Charlottesville, Virginia, and supporting James through 2 career shifts, a bankruptcy, and a heart surgery, I stood in that elegant room watching my husband attempt to ambush me with our divorce. As the stunned guests shuffled out, whispering condolences and casting sharp glances at James, I approached him with the serenity of someone who'd long ago braced for the storm. "You'll want to call her first thing tomorrow," I said, pressing a single business card into his palm. His eyes widened as he read the name, Cassandra Blake, Esquire, one of Virginia's most formidable divorce attorneys. "Why do you have this?" he asked, his confidence wavering. I offered a small smile, patted his shoulder, and turned to embrace our bewildered children. Over their shoulders, I saw James's smug expression falter, a crack forming in his self-assured facade. What James didn't know, what I'd ensured he'd never suspect, was that 8 months earlier, while searching his study for our mortgage paperwork, I'd stumbled across a rental agreement for a loft in Richmond's trendy Carytown district. 3 days later, I noticed a string of overly familiar texts on his phone from someone labeled only as colleague when it buzzed during supper. That was merely the start of what I uncovered. By the time James dropped his divorce announcement at our anniversary, I'd spent months meticulously cataloging every detail of his infidelity. He thought he was dictating the end of our marriage, but I'd been crafting my own strategy with surgical precision since New Year's Eve. My grandmother always said, "Believe, but confirm." It was wisdom I'd overlooked for most of my marriage, trusting James without question. We met when I was 30, and he was 32, both of us employed at Crestwell Solutions, me in human resources, him a charismatic standout in sales. Our romance sparked quickly, and within a year, we were married, a prenuptial agreement safeguarding us both should things unravel. 2 wonderful children came soon after, and I eventually left my career to focus on our growing family. While James's sales career skyrocketed, he jumped from Crestwell to Silverton Industries, then to Pinnacle Automotive, ascending the corporate ranks with each move. I backed every choice, every late night, every weekend business trip, even as our children, Emma and Michael, missed their father at basketball games and piano recitals. "Your dad's working hard for us," I'd tell them, convincing myself too. And he did provide generously, a spacious craftsman home in Charlottesville's Belmont neighborhood, private schools for the kids, and luxurious family vacations twice a year. But in hindsight, I see the clues I overlooked. the slow, emotional drift, the subtle jabs at my appearance, compared to the polished colleagues he admired, the fading physical connection brushed off as stress or aging. Marriages evolve after 20 years, my friends would say. It's normal to feel like housemates. What wasn't normal was the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume on his jacket after late client dinners, or the second phone I found in his suitcase while packing for his appendectomy hospital stay 3 years ago. He claimed it was for overseas accounts, and it vanished after his recovery. I dismissed these as mix-ups. The alternative was too shattering to face. That is, until New Year's Day this year. James overlooked the holiday entirely, not uncommon lately, but cited a sudden client crisis when I reminded him of our dinner plans. I spent the evening alone, leafing through old photo albums, wondering how we'd strayed so far from the couple in those weathered snapshots. The next morning, needing our mortgage documents to file taxes early, I found it nestled among insurance papers and car titles. A lease agreement for a loft on West Mason Avenue, signed 3 months prior. James's signature unmistakable on a 1-bedroom unit, costing nearly 1/3 of his monthly income. That discovery reshaped how I viewed our 25th year of marriage. I sat in my car outside the sleek building for hours that day, its modern glass facade and rooftop lounge taunting everything I thought I knew about our finances. "We need to tighten our budget this year," James had said weeks earlier. "The economy's shaky." Yet he'd found funds for a $2,500 monthly rental in Charlottesville's priciest district. Money he claimed we couldn't spare for the bathroom remodel I'd wanted for years. When I finally drove home, I made 2 vows that would redefine my path. First, I wouldn't confront James until I fully grasped the situation. Second, I'd safeguard myself by collecting every piece of evidence before acting. The next morning, while James was at the gym, I checked his phone. He thought his fingerprint lock was foolproof, but I'd long noticed he used his left thumb to unlock it. While James slept, I gently pressed his thumb to his phone's sensor, unlocking a flood of messages that shattered my worst suspicions. He and his colleague, Lauren Mitchell, had been entangled for at least 15 months. Their texts were brazen, littered with mentions of our spot and dreams of a future together once he sorted things out at home. Reading their words, I learned Lauren was 36, newly single, and a marketing specialist at Pinnacle Automotive. She'd apparently persuaded James that their age gap romance was his chance to reclaim vitality and adventure. My hands trembled as I snapped photos of critical exchanges with my phone, capturing timestamps and contact details. The betrayal's weight was visceral, a crushing pressure in my chest that stole my breath. 25 years of memories warped under the realization that our recent years were woven with deceit. That night, as James brushed a distracted kiss on my forehead before burying himself in work emails, I fought to keep my composure. The impulse to confront him, to hurl his lies in his face, was nearly unbearable. Instead, I handed him his usual evening scotch and asked lightly, "Another late night?" "End of quarter crunch," he muttered, eyes fixed on his screen. "Don't wait up." I nodded, retreating to our bedroom, where I allowed myself a brief, silent cry before dialing my closest friend, Claire. "I need the best divorce attorney in Charlottesville," I told her, my voice steady, in complete confidentiality. 2 days later, I sat across from Cassandra Blake in her sleek downtown office, presenting the evidence I'd gathered so far. The poised attorney, with her sharp gray eyes and neatly cropped hair, listened intently before delivering words that would guide me in the months ahead. We won't just prepare a case, Eleanor. We'll construct an unshakable stronghold. But first, we need the full picture of what we're facing. Cassandra's counsel was precise. Become a covert operative in my own marriage, document everything, trace the money, map our marital assets, and track James's actions without hinting at my awareness. Your greatest weapon is surprise, she advised. Once he knows you're on to him, he'll start concealing assets and spinning his own story. Thus began my double life. Outwardly, I remained the devoted wife of 25 years, running our household, accompanying James to company events, and organizing our upcoming anniversary celebration. Beneath that veneer, I became a relentless investigator, cataloging every detail of our financial and personal lives. I started with our finances. James had always overseen investments while I handled household bills. Now, I needed a complete view of our portfolio. I told him I wanted to learn about investing for my own interest, a request he met with a condescending chuckle, but ultimately indulged by sharing our financial advisor's contact. Just don't touch anything without my say-so, he warned. It's complex. Our advisor, Edward Carter, was initially hesitant to share details until I politely noted that, as James's spouse, I was legally entitled to access our joint assets. Once reassured, Edward proved surprisingly open, especially after I casually mentioned noticing odd transactions in our accounts. Well, there have been some sizable withdrawals over the past 15 months, Edward admitted, assuming James had kept me in the loop. He hadn't. The withdrawals amounted to nearly $280,000, funds siphoned from our joint investment accounts into an unfamiliar entity, Hayes Ventures, LLC. James had set it up as a side project for consulting work outside his primary job, Edward explained. A venture I'd never heard of. Cassandra later clarified it was likely a shell company designed to divert marital assets from our shared portfolio. I photographed every document Edward provided, cataloging dates, amounts, and account numbers. Next, I turned to our home computer. James wasn't tech-savvy, relying on predictable passwords, combinations of our children's birthdays, and our anniversary. The irony stung as I used Emma 41920 to access his email. What I uncovered deepened my suspicions and exposed fresh betrayals. Email threads with a realtor about a condo purchase in Raleigh, North Carolina. A job offer from Vantage Sound. A Raleigh-based firm, dated 4 months prior. Flight confirmations for weekend trips he'd passed off as client golf retreats, and scores of emails to Lauren plotting their future. Once the anniversary party's done, I'll wrap up the divorce fast, he wrote in one. Eleanor will be crushed, but she'll move on. It lines up perfectly with the Raleigh move. They had orchestrated everything. James would announce our divorce at the anniversary party, framing himself as the forthright husband who'd simply fallen out of love, but waited respectfully for our milestone before moving forward. Then he'd relocate to Raleigh with Lauren, start his new role at Vantage, and settle into the condo they'd already chosen. Staring at their calculated blueprint to upend my life, I felt a resolve solidify within me. This wasn't just an affair or a midlife whim. It was a deliberate scheme to discard me with minimal financial fallout after I'd poured my entire adult life into supporting his ambitions. That night, I made a silent vow. James Hayes would be blindsided, Under Cassandra's guidance, I deepened my investigation. I needed to grasp not only James's plans, but the legal weaknesses in his approach. Our prenuptial agreement was clear. In a divorce, each party kept premarital assets, while marital assets were split evenly. But Cassandra zeroed in on a pivotal infidelity clause. If either spouse engages in an extramarital affair, they lose key protections, she explained. The betrayed spouse can claim a much larger share of assets accumulated during the affair's duration. The challenge was proving the affair's timeline. If I could show James's relationship with Lauren spanned years, not months, I could secure more than half our marital property, including parts of his pension and stock options. I hired a private investigator, Thomas Reed, who specialized in infidelity cases. His fees were steep, but I dipped into my personal savings, funds I'd quietly amassed from occasional freelance HR work James didn't know about. Thomas confirmed the affair stretched back at least 20 months, providing photos of James and Lauren dining out, entering and exiting the loft, and traveling to Raleigh on weekends James had claimed were for golf. The most incriminating evidence came from interviews Thomas conducted with Pinnacle Automotive staff. 3 colleagues confirmed the affair was an open secret by early 2023. Thomas noted one former administrative assistant had kept a meticulous work log documenting multiple instances of them alone in James's office, door locked. She'd been let go soon after, ostensibly for productivity issues. Thomas tracked down the former assistant, who was eager to share her logs and testify if needed, still resentful about her abrupt firing, which she believed was engineered to silence her. Armed with this, Cassandra bolstered our strategy with workplace misconduct implications. If needed, we can imply Pinnacle Automotive faces liability for permitting a senior executive's improper relationship with a subordinate, she explained. It's leverage we may not use, but it's powerful to have. As weeks passed, I continued collecting evidence while projecting complete ignorance. I proposed the anniversary party, knowing it matched James's plans with Lauren, and spoke warmly about our next 25 years around friends and family. I even initiated affection at times, which visibly unsettled James, though he couldn't refuse without arousing suspicion. When he fabricated work excuses for trips to the loft or Raleigh, I smiled and said I understood. When he grumbled about finances while secretly bankrolling his double life, I nodded empathetically, all while my case file thickened. 2 weeks before the anniversary, I made a pivotal find while archiving family photos to our cloud storage. In our shared account, I stumbled on a folder James had mistakenly created, containing explicit photos of him and Lauren in the loft, dated consistently over the past 20 months. I promptly sent them to Cassandra and Thomas, who confirmed they solidified the affair's timeline. "We're set," Cassandra said at our final meeting before the party. "When he makes his move, we'll counter with devastating precision. He'll be caught off guard." Leaving her office, I felt an unexpected calm. After months of investigation, documentation, and strategic planning, all that remained was waiting for James to trigger his plan, unaware he was stepping into mine. The anniversary party was my carefully crafted deception. I booked the grand ballroom at the Omni Hotel, hired a chamber trio, and orchestrated an elegant evening celebrating our enduring bond. Invitations, cream cardstock with silver foil, went to 50 close friends and family. I studied James's expression as I shared the guest list. "This feels extravagant," he remarked, visibly uneasy about the scale of a celebration he planned to end in ruin. 25 years calls for something memorable, I replied with a smile. Don't worry, I've budgeted for it. The night arrived, and I wore a shimmering silver dress, tailored to perfection over multiple fittings. James grew increasingly restless as guests arrived, each offering congratulations on our milestone. Our children had traveled in, Michael from Portland, Emma from New York, and both delivered heartfelt toasts about witnessing their parents' devoted partnership. You've taught us what true commitment looks like, Emma said, raising her glass, while James squirmed beside me. Throughout dinner, I noticed James glancing at his watch, his expression hardening with each hour. I knew he was following the timeline he'd outlined to Lauren. Announce the divorce after the main course, but before dessert, allowing a composed exit while guests remained to console me. When he finally stood and tapped his glass, silence swept the room. I watched his rehearsed smile, poised for the moment he thought would define our end. I observed the calculated ease in James's stance, imagining how often he'd rehearsed this moment. His proclamation of freedom, his fresh start at my expense. I have something to say, he began, his voice steady. After a lot of thought, I need to be honest with everyone here tonight. He paused, surveying the room before continuing. I've been unhappy for years, he declared, the scripted line landing awkwardly in the opulent ballroom. I want a divorce. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Emma's wine glass slipped, shattering on the polished oak floor. Michael pushed back his chair, his face a mix of shock and fury. Friends stared, dumbfounded, but I was prepared. I'd choreographed this moment as meticulously as James had. I nodded calmly and said, I understand. The flicker of bewilderment on his face repaid every second of the past 8 months' deception. He'd braced for tears, begging, or a spectacle. Instead, my serene acceptance derailed his narrative of being the rational spouse, ending an unfulfilling marriage. Let's thank everyone for coming, I continued, rising to address our stunned guests. This has been a beautiful tribute to our past, as we step into separate futures. One by one, I embraced each departing guest, accepting their murmured sympathies and puzzled support with poised smiles. James lingered uneasily near the gift table, his grand moment dissolving into awkward social maneuvering. When the last guest had left, except for our children, who stood teary-eyed by the exit, I approached him with measured calm. You'll want to contact her tomorrow morning, I said, pressing Cassandra's business card into his palm. He stared at it, recognition dawning slowly. Cassandra Blake? The divorce attorney? Yes, I confirmed. She's selective, but she took my case 8 months ago. His face paled as the timeline sank in. 8 months. Don't bother coming home tonight, I added lightly. I had the locks changed this afternoon. Your essentials are in a bag at the coat check. I'm sure you have somewhere to stay, don't you? As he stood, stunned, I turned to Emma and Michael, linking arms with them. Let's have that cake at home. I think we've celebrated enough tonight. James's attorney called at 7:08 a.m. the next morning. I was already up, having slept more soundly than I had in months. This is Gregory Walsh, representing James Hayes, the voice said formally. We need to discuss the situation. Please, direct all communication to Cassandra Blake, I replied, following the script Cassandra and I had rehearsed. She's expecting your call by 9 a.m. Cassandra phoned later to update me. James was scrambling, offering a swift, seemingly generous settlement. A sign he hadn't yet realized the depth of my preparation. He's proposing a 60-40 split of known assets in your favor, plus the house, she said. Shall I let him know we're just warming up? Definitely, I replied. By 10:30 a.m., divorce papers were served to James at Pinnacle Automotive's headquarters, delivered by a process server who, per my request, presented them during a senior staff meeting James was chairing. The hefty document outlined my demands. 80% of marital assets, the house, and substantial alimony, backed by exhaustive evidence of his infidelity, financial maneuvering, and plans to relocate to Raleigh. By midday, 3 events unfolded swiftly. James's attorney demanded an urgent meeting. Pinnacle's HR director summoned James to their office, and Lauren Mitchell cleared her desk, leaving the building in distress. When Cassandra met with James and his lawyer that afternoon, she unveiled the decisive blow: Thomas Reed's comprehensive investigative report, including sworn statements from former Pinnacle employees about the improper workplace relationship. My client is ready to escalate this to Pinnacle's board regarding the company's failure to address this conduct unless we reach an equitable agreement, Cassandra stated. We also have records of Hayes Ventures LLC, the shell company used to siphon marital assets, which could prompt questions of tax violations that regulators might find compelling. James's bid to control the divorce narrative crumbled within 24 hours. His lawyer called for a brief pause, likely to deliver sobering news to my husband of 25 years. Settlement talks were strikingly short, facing potential career ruin, tax scrutiny, and the collapse of his carefully crafted story. James agreed to terms beyond what Cassandra had initially deemed feasible. I secured 80% of our marital assets, full ownership of our Charlottesville home, his pension funds, and investment accounts. James kept only his personal belongings, his car, and a single investment account worth roughly 1/6 of our total wealth. Alimony payments were set for 12 years, ensuring my financial stability well into retirement. Most gratifying was the non-disclosure clause. James could never publicly discuss the divorce's circumstances, blocking him from weaving a victimized tale about our split. In return, I agreed not to directly contact Pinnacle's board about his relationship with Lauren, though I left open the possibility that details might surface through other avenues. 3 days after the anniversary party, Emma and Michael joined me for dinner. They were still grappling with the public unraveling of their parents' marriage, but began to comprehend the situation after I shared select details of James's betrayal. "How did you keep so composed through all this?" Emma asked, refilling her wine glass. "I'd have slashed his tires or something." "Calculated restraint," I replied. "Your father underestimated my mind, seeing me only as the dutiful wife. That oversight was my edge." Michael shook his head, half smiling. "Note to self, never cross you, Mom." I smiled, feeling a lightness I hadn't known in months. I didn't start out wanting vengeance. I wanted justice. But when I saw how thoroughly he planned to cast me aside, I decided he needed to know exactly who he was up against. A month later, James moved to Raleigh as intended, alone, significantly diminished in wealth and reputation. Lauren, it seemed, lost interest once his financial outlook faltered. The condo James and Lauren had chosen together was now far beyond his financial reach, and Vantage Sound withdrew their job offer after learning of the circumstances surrounding his exit from Pinnacle Automotive. Meanwhile, I embarked on the next phase of my life, on my own terms, equipped with substantial resources, restored dignity, and the deep fulfillment of knowing I'd met the challenge with a resilience and ingenuity I hadn't realized I possessed. As I settled into my redefined life, I pondered the irony. In his attempt to cast me aside, James had unwittingly liberated me to embrace a truer version of myself than I'd known in 25 years of marriage.